Okay, hello there, Sunfisher. Right, first part of this video, we'll be going out on both TikTok and YouTube. It's mainly for the TikTok crowd, because most of you have followed me for a while on YouTube or have talked to me on Telegram or are even part of the Data Drops membership on Telegram. We'll know all this already. So I'll put a timestamp in the description and you can skip this bit if you want, because most of you will have heard this quite a lot before. The other reason why this first part will be on TikTok and only on TikTok as well as YouTube is because you can only record up to 10 minutes on TikTok, which is daft. But anyway, so if you want to watch the rest of this video, if you're watching this on TikTok, come over to YouTube. Right. I've said this a lot about this field, this alternative research field that we're in. You have to be flexible. It's multidisciplined, multi-approach. You have to wear many hats, so to speak. Especially when you've been doing it a long while, you start to realise that everything is connected together. This field is also full of minefields. It really is. Just like mainstream academia, I liken it to being extremely similar to the way Abrahamic religions are. In other words, there's thousands of denominations, all of them with different dogmas, all of them with their own archdeacons and zealots that enforce those dogmas and won't let anything like that be questioned, and all revolving around their own pope or cult of personality. A great deal of the information that is out there is very often made up by quite creative people sometimes, but very often by implanted agents, so to speak, who have built these cults of personality around them. The reason why I'm saying this is because I've had to do a couple of videos on Tartaria. Now, I'm not saying you guys who are into Tartaria are wrong. I'm not saying that there was no such thing. I don't really believe there was. Right? That's just from what I've researched. I've not found any evidence for it. Right? Some of you may have, right? And I've just not seen it. I don't know. But the videos I made were because quite a lot of the Tartaria stuff that's out there, especially on TikTok, is completely fabricated, completely made up. And this damages your whole movement, your whole theory, yeah? You can't just make shit up, or you can't just see something and think, oh, well, that's that photo there. It must be Tartarian because there's nothing else around it, as is the case with the Lincoln Memorial, right? Which is one of the debunked videos that I did. You can find the construction videos easily. Same with the World's Fair, yeah? The 1893 World's Fair in Chicago. People push that as Tartarian buildings. They weren't. In most cases, the vast majority of those buildings were made from plasterboard and wood. Some of them with ironwork, depending on what kind of structure they were building. They'd have to use iron in some cases, but the vast majority were wood and plasterboard. It's amazing what you can do, right, with plaster. You can make things look extremely real. They were essentially film sets, yeah? Think of the old 1940s movies like Antony and Cleopatra or Ben-Hur even, which is amazing. Spartacus would be another one. Do you think they were at locations the vast majority of the time? Yeah, that look like that? Of course not. That's stupid. They built those sets. The vast majority of the films that you see today, when they're outside, it looks like they're in a location. They're not. It's a film set. You have to be very, very careful. Very, very careful when you make bold claims that there isn't something that's going to pull it apart straight away. And that's what the vast majority of you are doing. Pushing stuff like this with the Chicago World's Fair or with the Lincoln Memorial. It damages your whole theory and your credibility. Anyway, thanks for watching me on TikTok. But now we're going to go into the recap for Series 1 and Series 2 of Epic Wars and Alien Tech. Alright, so thank you very much.
One, two. One, two. One, two.
Well, I started this project about 2 years ago now. I never expected that I'd get 3 years of, well, 3 series out of it. I didn't think I'd get 1 series out of it. On 3. And yeah, here we are, coming up to the release of Series 3 of this series at the end of the month. And there's still loads more. I could get at least another, maybe 3 or 4 series out of this. There's that much information. As many of you may know, ancient history, biblical history, ancient myths, legends, folklore have been a passion of mine for about 35 years. But it wasn't up until 2 years ago when Putin invaded Ukraine that things began to slot together very quickly. Pardon me. Now, because it's been so long, there's been such a long gap, which unfortunately there has to be between each series, just so I can get the research ready and formulate it in my mind to then make the next series, if you get what I mean. That's why there's such a long break. But everything started falling into place when he did that, and it was because of something Putin did in 2014 when he annexed Crimea. And he just headed to one area, and this one area I knew about already, and that was the site of a pyramid under the ground, just outside of Sevastopol in Crimea. Now this was found by accident by a guy called Vitaly Go. I've already gone through all this already. But he just annexed that whole area. So then it got me looking into, well, what's he doing in Donbass? Because he's only going so far in Donbass. He's not going any further. And why are the US so desperate to get Crimea back off Putin? It can't just be because of the Black Sea, I thought to myself. And then I started remembering all the stuff that they did back in the day in the Iraq War and in Afghanistan. all the stories coming out of there, and all the stories about Iraq, how they just made a complete beeline for Baghdad and then straight into the Baghdad Museum and emptying the vaults. I started seeing similarities there between that and Crimea, and then that and Donbass. There's a whole way that the Putin's takeover of Donbass began, when he just hopped over the Belarusian border and took over the whole of the Chernobyl exclusion zone, which was very unusual. I found out that was linked to Ghislaine Maxwell. I started to find out about all the underground sort of tunnels that are around there, and then started finding out about Tripalia, which at one time was thought to be a separate, a new civilization, but turned out to be actually a capital city of a vast empire that stretched all the way around the Black Sea Basin area, which led me to Yuri Shilov, who is the author of the book The Secret History of Aratta, Ukraine, which led me to Aratta and Gilgamesh, and also Gilgamesh's dream tablet that was taken from a Bible museum in 2018 by the FBI, 10 years after this guy bought it, and it was on display, so they knew it was there. So I took it at that time. So the more I learnt about Aratta and Inanna, who was its ruler, and the stuff that was going on in there, the core samples that were taken by a university team, I think it was in Mariupol, and they did core samples of the seabed in the Black Sea. When they brought up the core samples, they found flecks, like pulverised lapis lazuli. Why is that there? That's also, the way it's pulverised as well is indicative of mining, especially when they bring it up with the slurry as well that comes from mining also, and all the silt. It also showed flooding, massive flooding, around 8,000 years ago, coming from one direction. And that direction was coming from the areas of Kabardino-Balkaria and Georgia. And behind Georgia, like behind those, is the Caspian Sea, which led a friend of mine, a fellow researcher, who's been a tremendous help, Thumper, to finding a strange sort of structure inside a mountain in Kabardino-Balkaria, which is an area of Russia on the border with Georgia. And from this structure, there are several lakes in a line, one going towards the Black Sea, the other going towards the Caspian. No one knows how deep they are. They're all very acidic. There's nothing living in them. This led me to firmly believe that what that structure is inside that mountain is a gravity pump. I firmly believe now that whole Black Sea area was a huge strip mining operation, mining lapis lazuli. So why were they doing that? Why were they mining so much? This civilization, the Aratta, it's looking extremely likely now that they were extremely highly technologically advanced to be able to build something on the scale of that gravity pump and strip mine that area. One thing about quartz is it's extremely piezoelectric for a start, and lapis lazuli is an extremely pure form of quartz. And it can also hold a tremendous amount of data, something that we're starting to figure out now. There's little tiny quartz discs about the size of a 10p piece or a dime if you live in America, that can hold pretty much a petabyte of data. Yeah, or half a petabyte anyway, which is like it's about 500 terabytes. Yeah, which is a huge amount of data, and you can store it indefinitely. It was likely they were using the lapis for quite possibly data storage, maybe some sort of computing technology, ancient computing technology, even energy generation, like I said, because it's piezoelectric. But all of this then started getting me looking into the folklore, because there's several sites all the way around that Black Sea area. In Ukraine, you've got a lot of what seem to be underground tunnel complexes and chamber complexes, one of which is under Mariupol, off the Azov Sea coast, which is where a lot of the Tripalian sort of stuff is found, and where also, interestingly enough, the Aratta Museum was. I don't know if it's still there anymore because of the war. It's also the site of Azovstal, which is a huge, huge steelworks complex. It's the size of a city. It's the size of Mariupol, which is right next door to it. Underneath that is a 3-floor complex of catacombs. Why is there catacombs under a steelworks? That was immediately something that struck my mind. It was also the site of a siege for a long while, where the Russians had that whole area surrounded and wouldn't let any Azov soldiers out, or let anyone in. There was also not meant to be any civilians there, so when the Russians were shelling it, and all of a sudden they were saying, we've got civilians in here, it made me wonder. That whole siege was very, very suspicious, especially when Elon Musk was flying in Starlink monitor equipment and high-end PCs to the area. Why is that? And why are the Russians allowing them in? Very strange. Bakhmut, another highly contested area in Ukraine. Beneath there is a huge, they say salt mine, except it's 10 levels deep and stretches out at least 280 miles in all directions. It's a pretty big salt mine. Under Chernobyl's another very strange site. That whole area of Pripyat and the exclusion zone is, again, very suspicious. The red forest that was decimated supposedly by radiation is in a green band area, which means that it's not really that radioactive yet. All of that forest on one side was decimated, whereas forests pretty close to where the Chernobyl accident happened are perfectly fine. Just below the red forest, just next to it, in this triangle of very unusual sites anyway, is a village called Gematria that they buried. Moved everyone out and buried, apart from 4 buildings in key areas around it. These just so happen to be buildings with very deep basements. What did they find there? Well, it turns out there's tunnel systems running all the way around it. To the north you have the Jupiter Communications Factory that, as far as I'm aware, from what I've seen, never produced any sort of communications equipment, no tape recorders, no tape, no nothing. Yeah. So what was it doing? You have the Doggarland radar station, which is down to the southwest corner of this triangle. That is the home of the largest over-the-horizon radar in the world, called the Woodpecker. And its control station again with a 3-level basement. A huge complex. To the south east of the Jupiter Communications Factory up here, you have the Lavrov missile installation, Grand Square missile installation. That is a huge bunker again, 3 to 4 level, stretches out a mile in all directions underneath. It could be bigger, no one's entirely sure. That has never fired a missile. Supposedly it shot down the U2 plane, U2 spy plane in the 1960s, I think it was. But again, no one's entirely sure of that. And then you have the whole Pripyat area that is also deserted and now has a huge contingent of soldiers guarding the area. And then you have Odessa, which is the southeast coast of Ukraine. That is also the site of a 3-level tunnel catacomb complex that supposedly was built in Georgian times, but it doesn't really look like that. And that's just in Donbass and Crimea. Then you have that, like I said, in Kabardino-Balkaria. You have huge underground complexes in Romania. You have what was called the Sarachina incident that happened in Bulgaria. That is also very close to the coast again, where supposedly Russian KGB soldiers found encountered an entity inside a very ancient-looking, huge underground complex that has now been cemented over. You also have all the you have Göbekli Tepe and everything else in Turkey. All of that area was basically inhabited by the Aratta. Now that was the main focus of Series 1 of Epics Was and Maybe Alien Tech. Series 2 I began to span out because although I was finding a lot in that area, I wanted to know where the Aratta came from, because it just suddenly sprang up 20,000 years ago and then disappeared 8,000 years ago. So I wanted to, 1, know where they went, and 2, where they actually came from. Were they just indigenous to that area, or did they come from somewhere else? That led me to looking at the Scythians. Now the Scythians came from over in the Asian steppe region, yeah? Primarily Afghanistan. Now Afghanistan's an interesting area because they're the only people in that Asian steppe region, yeah? Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, blah blah blah, that have green eyes, Arabic looking but with green eyes. This is from something they've inherited from their Slavic roots, which comes from Aratta. The Cossacks too are also the closest genetic descendants to the Arattans, who are an offshoot again of the Scythians. We know this because of they found some very well preserved bodies in a burial mound of Scythian kings, and Putin wanted to genetically splice them with the closest living descendants, which were the Cossacks. He was only wanting Cossacks to do that with. If you don't know about the Scythians, don't worry, there will be an episode of this new series about them. This also led me out towards, well, outwards from there, and led me into the Scandinavian regions, all of France, Italy, Bosnia as well. Bosnia is a very unusual area, which we will cover again, so I won't spoil it. But I got some extremely good information from someone that was very, very knowledgeable about the folklore and the genealogy of that whole. Anyway, from Bosnia it led me to France and Scandinavia, like I said, following the linkages between Odin and Wotan and Wotan, who incidentally also has ties to Mercury and Hermes in Greek and Roman myth, Thoth in Egyptian mythology, Spasiana, which is in Sumerian mythology, and also Enoch. The reason being is he is a living being that's given divine he's basically made a god as a reward for something that he's the deeds that he's done for mankind. Because of that, I started finding a route, a very, very plausible route from where all of that came from. Because you'll notice that when you start looking back all the Slavic and European sort of mythologies, and even the Egyptian ones and the Middle Eastern ones, all stem from one area. And that is an area of the English Channel called Doggarland. Now, before it became the English Channel, it was above water up until around between 50 and 20,000 years ago, when it started to fill. This was a massive culture. The whole of the whole of Doggarland basically stretched from the British Isles all the way through the English Channel up towards Norway, Denmark, the Netherlands, and France. It was huge. Now, I thought it was just tribes at one point, and this is because of all the stuff that they've been dredging up from the English Channel. But it turns out there's a lot of legends and stories around the whole of the UK, and especially in Ireland, and also across the water in France and the Netherlands and Denmark and blah blah blah. They all talk about these sort of beings, these gigantic sorts of people coming from an area and wielding immense power, immense technological power. In Ireland, they're called the Fomorian. They're also the antagonists to their sort of the Celtic sort of pantheon of gods in ancient English and Irish and Welsh sort of Celtic beliefs. So this is where you get Luke and basically all that pantheon. But the Fomorians sound very similar, especially their chief, whose name I can't remember. He was basically a Cyclops. But when you read his description, you hear his description, it sounds very much like Odin. Same sort of thing, you see. So it made me begin to realise that all of these these ideas were based on real living people in some respects. Yeah, they may have been giants, or they may have been actual people, but they were. The common theme is they were all extremely technologically advanced, because what they did looked to the people around them like magic. It really did, as Arthur C. Clarke says. Any sort of significantly highly advanced technology will to us look like magic, which is true. You show a tablet to a hunter-gatherer in a Masai Mara, who's never seen one before, and he will immediately think that you've got a magical mirror to see the future or the world or what someone's doing. It will look like magic to them. When we know how it works technologically, some of us probably still do think it's magic, but that's beside the point. So I began to realise from there that all our religions were based around this, our religious and legendary beliefs and the pantheon of gods and everything else were all based on actual people, actual living beings, who very likely had extremely long lifespans because of their advanced sort of technology. One of the things that led me to this idea was Richard Seed. If you don't know who he was a polymath. Basically, he was a physics PhD. He was a fertility expert. He developed a fertility treatment that was far more effective and far more successful than IVF. And he was also a cloning expert. And he burst on the scene in 1998, claiming that he just needed $2 million in 2 years to actually create a human clone. A lot of the things that he discovered were stolen and then attributed to other people, such as the mRNA vaccines, the CRISPR technology. All of this comes from the Wallenberg Foundation. They actually stole his research after he died in 2003. And claimed it as their own, much like they did with Nikola Tesla. I liken Richard Seed to the genetic engineering equivalent of Nikola Tesla. His work was that groundbreaking, it really was. Anyway, so this led me to what kind of stuff they were doing, genetics wise, genetic engineering wise, which led me to our chromosomes, and how we only have 23, and every other great ape, what they call the great apes on the planet, has 24 base chromosomes. Put together 48, we have 46. And that's because two of them are fused together. Now, the way they're fused and where they're fused at is indicative of genetic engineering. And I think this was done in order to create a schism between us and our elite. Our true elite, the royal bloodlines and the noble bloodlines, are basically descended from these Arattans. There was something that they did 50,000 years ago that set in motion a series of events that has caused what we're going through now. They're doing something very dark, and this has remained with us all the way through. And it started, I think, at Doggarland. Before Doggarland, which we'll get to in Series 3, I think I know now where these Doggerlandians came from originally. Like I said, that's a surprise for Series 3. But something was started there, and this caused a lot of cataclysms and forced them to move from that area and spread out, some up to Scandinavian areas of Norway, Sweden and Finland, down towards France and Denmark and the Netherlands, and the rest across to the UK. And then around 8,000 years ago, which also coincides with the filling of the Black Sea Basin, there was a landslide off the coast of Norway that dropped the whole coastline of Norway into the sea and created a tsunami that basically wiped out the remnant of the Doggerlandians. Those that left all that area across Europe have basically started to create the Norse sort of civilizations going round and then down, and from France they went from France down to the Mediterranean and through around to the Black Sea. They all seem to be drawn to that Black Sea area. That's one thing that I can't completely fathom. What was it that drew them there? It was fertile land, right? There was a lot of lapis lazuli there, and maybe that was what it was, I don't know. But there is countless folk tales and legends all the way around that area of people coming either from the west to there, and teaching them all sorts of different sorts of civilizational techniques. Or in the case of Georgia, which has extremely similar sort of mythological and legendary structure to the UK, they came across the Black Sea and taught them everything else. And you see, the unusual thing about Georgia, there are other nations that have their sort of St. George myths, but the unusual thing about Georgia is they also have their own sort of version of King Arthur and the King Arthur myth, which is extremely similar to ours in the UK. It's got its own Excalibur, its own Sword in the Stone mythology, its own Merlin, which is very likely the same bloke. He comes across the sea, and he deconstructs this mountain, which is where this gravity pump was that I mentioned, right? They talk about this mountain being deconstructed and a weapon, or the access to a weapon, being hidden inside this mountain that they then fashioned the mountain around, which is just an amazing sort of tale. And there's the actual how Bob just absolutely spot on that folk tale, supposed folk tale is, still to this day is remarkable when you factor in the actual structure that's inside that mountain. on the border of Georgia and Kabardino-Balkaria, that gravity pump. This is why that gravity pump is there. There's some Sumerian tablets that talk about a war between Inanna and the two brothers. And it was started from a misunderstanding after their speech was altered. Yeah, their language was altered, so they couldn't understand each other, and it was a misunderstanding from a staff that was given by Inanna to her brother in Egypt, oh no, sorry, the Abzu area, which is like South Africa, given to him as a sort of tribute, and the guy who was meant to translate it on the way died. He died of natural causes apparently, and this caused a massive war between her and, I think it's Nergal, sorry. It also drew in her rather more powerful sort of brother, which was Marduk, that was whose kingdom was South America. It's crazy. Now this drew him in, and it was over something that was called the Tablets of Destiny. Now people have argued about what the Tablets of Destiny were. It's known that they were a weapon of some kind, or maybe, as I think, a control mechanism of some kind for a very sort of powerful weapon. And it was something that Inanna hid on Earth from the two brothers to ensure that they would never get it, because that weapon was so powerful. It's my firm belief that she flooded the Black Sea she brought that gravity pump, so it just continuously pumped water from the Caspian Sea into the Black Sea to hide beneath those waves whatever the Tablets of Destiny were. I think they're below the Black Sea. I've got a vague idea where they might be there. The Caspian Sea for millennia has been draining. Yeah, no one knows why. The Black Sea is also very acidic. Yeah, no one knows why it's so acidic either. And this is again because of, I firmly believe, because of all the mining that was done in the area. It's taken a lot of the minerals from the surrounding rock when they were pumping it through into the Caspian, which I believe was a spillway and sluice kind of dual sort of purpose. It had pumped water back into the Caspian to fill it back up, and it would draw it back out to use to clean, or like the lapis ore off. Yeah. So this caused the waters to be very acidic. There's nothing that actually lives in there. There's only jellyfish. You can't really fish in there or anything. It's virtually dead. So it's my belief that she did that to hide the Tablets of Destiny from two brothers. Yeah, because when you actually read the Sumerian tablets, and it goes through the spoils of war, right, in meticulous detail, I might add, about what they gained from Inanna and the Arattan kingdom, there's no tablets. Then you get the Epic of Gilgamesh, who looks for a guy called Utnapishtim, right, who is the biblical Noah, who's known as Atrahasis, Ziusudra, in Akkadian sort of belief. He's known as different sort of names everywhere. And there's some main components of it, which are basically that he lived to a very old age. He took his family, he took either the seed of certain animals or 2x2, you know the Noah story. It's very similar across the board. But in the Epic of Gilgamesh, he's said to live in a garden, and the gates of this garden are in the ruins of the city of Aratta, right, or the capital of Aratta. And Gilgamesh even says himself that it was ancient before he got there. This is something that people like Matthew Lacroix and Billy Carson and all those don't tell you, because it talks about his journey across several mountain ranges and a sea of death to get to the ruins of Aratta. And yet they say that Aratta was in Iran. That was the Giroth, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, the Giroth and the Mesopotamians didn't see eye to eye, but the Giroth were not Aratta. Aratta was way before them, because even Gilgamesh says it was long gone before he got there. And then when he's sleeping outside the gates, he fights three spirits of Arattan kings. And after he's defeated them, when they turn into lions, he then goes through the gates to Pishtim. And he goes through this gate. It's like a black tunnel, white light at the end, and boom, he's in a garden in the middle of nowhere. Now you'd think, right, that would be something he'd notice prior to going in those gates and would have described. Yeah? Which means that whatever gate he went through is more like a portal. Where does that portal lead? I'm not entirely sure. But the gods saw fit, the ancient gods saw fit to give him immortality as his reward. And it was the immortality that Gilgamesh sought, was seeking out the secrets. So that's basically where we've got to. We know that they came from Doggarland. We know that all of these mythologies bleeding together. We know about the Syrians, blah 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 blah. So what we've got for series 3. You're gonna love this. I was going to do something different until I got some information about 2 months ago by a lady called Very Varsam on the Notice Telegram channel. Very, love your love, fantastic. And this has caused me to change what I was going to do for the beginning of this series. I was going to go back to Crimea and look at the pyramids, the underground pyramids that are there. That's going to be probably a double or maybe triple episode. And then we'll look closer at the Syrians, the Doggerlandians again, because there's far more that we need to talk about there. And then where they came from. Hopefully, with any luck, I can. I'm going to try and get an interview arranged with a guy called David Whitehead, who works with another guy called Michael Sarian. Hopefully, I'll be able to get them both together. But with any luck, I could get David to agree to an interview, and we'll talk about some of these very ancient legends, because I've got some surprises coming up. Anyway, that's the recap done. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you're all caught up. But if you haven't watched any of the 2 series before this new one coming up, I advise going and watching them. There's far more information that are in them. And like, share, subscribe. You know the drill. I'll see you later.